There's one single way that you can become the nominee for President of the United States without ever having to go through a competitive primary, and that's through the Vice President. Kamala Harris ran a fine campaign in 2024, but what if she hadn't? What if she made a bunch of unforced errors, perhaps bombed the debate, made a bunch of stupid decisions, and then she ended up losing in a landslide? Republicans win 57 seats in the US Senate instead of 53. They flipped Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan. And then a bunch of Democrats, they would be watching and they would fling their hands in the air and they would deflect, saying, what could I have done about this? I didn't choose for her to be the nominee. And they would be right. So how did we get to this point? Well, Kamala Harris, she's the vice president. She's the vice president who got the blessing of the president. So conceivably, you could see a situation where some potential challengers who might be more electable or challengers who thought they could better represent the party, such as, Michigan's governor, Gretchen Whitmer, or Kentucky's governor, Andy Beshear, they could have conceivably vouched for that role of being the Democratic nominee. But once she got the president's blessing, it was over. So in this situation, Kamala Harris, she becomes the Democratic nominee because of Joe Biden's endorsement. What if Joe Biden didn't endorse her? Well, that situation would never happen because Biden had to endorse her. Could you imagine the firestorm that would happen if Joe Biden did not endorse his own vice president? If he stiffed his own VP, the firestorm that would happen would be unbelievable. Suddenly everybody would be saying, wait, have you guys been beefing this whole time? And then you add in any identity undertones and it's just a complete mess. It's a no-go. So he had to endorse her. And then once he endorsed her, she would become the prohibitive nominee. So any potential challengers to become the nominee, well, they wouldn't be able to do anything because they know if they're trying to do what's in the interest of the best of the party, them challenging and running for a primary, even afterwards, the only thing that it would do would be to damage her campaign. They would, you would eventually have to highlight differences, and they would highlight the fact that they would be more moderate and more electable. It would damage her campaign, and then it would destroy the unity of the party. So it's in not only just their interest from the perspective of Whitmer or Beshear or any potential challenger, but in the interest of the broader party that they step aside. And so we have three parties in here. We have Kamala Harris, we have Joe Biden, and we have the potential challengers. And even if you look at it from Kamala Harris's point of view, it's conceivable to say that she's acting rationally, that, there's 100 days left in the campaign and only she's the one who can be able to kind of just steer the ship and be able to continue in her mind that she could be the one to steer the ship. You can never really blame a vice president for wanting to run for president. That's kind of like the reason that their whole job, right? So we have three parties not just doing what's in their own interest, but what they think is in the broader system's interest. And yet it produces this negative sum scenario where the end result is a subpar candidate that's representing one of the major parties for president of the United States. 75 plus million people are going to be voting for whoever are trying to be represented by this party, and that it produces a subpar result. This phenomenon happens all the time in American politics, and the result is consistent. Vice presidents significantly underperform in the election following the term that they serve. Nixon underperformed Eisenhower. Humphrey underperformed LBJ. H.W. Bush underperformed Reagan. Gore underperformed Clinton. Harris underperformed Biden. This is consistent. Part of the reason might be that there might be a little bit of fatigue from voting for the same party for multiple elections in a row. And some of it is that these vice presidents haven't been battle tested and had to undergo a filtration like test in the way that a traditional nominee that had to work from the bottom up had to do. If we think about some of the most proudest elections and the proudest nominees, the proudest campaigns that we've had in the Democratic Party, one of them would be in the modern history of the Democratic Party. It would be Bill Clinton in '92, flipping what was previously a 7-point landslide loss in 1988 and winning that pretty convincingly in the Electoral College and the popular vote in 1992, and Barack Obama in 2008. These are both candidates that they weren't VPs. They won that from the bottom up. They started just some random, maybe not random, but a person with moderate name recognition, but not anything prohibitive, and they won it. And what that ended up producing was two people with extraordinary charisma and a really, really sharp understanding of where the electorate is at on the issues. So what can we do about this? How do we prevent a situation where vice presidents end up becoming the nominee where at no point did they have to undergo some form of competitive primary to be able to vet them if they have the mannerisms or the intelligence or their positions on the issues that really represent where millions of people are at. And that's the point that competitive primaries do. Competition breeds excellence. And when you don't have any form of competitive primary, you can end up with a lackluster nominee to represent your party. How do we prevent this? Well, you have to have a rule that proactively sets a standard that precedes when that occasion arises. And that standard should be that vice presidents should be banned from running for president in the election following the term that they serve. Vice presidents represent a market failure. Everybody can act rationally once a vice president declares for president, and it will produce a subpar candidate because people don't want to step over toes, internal politics, and it's just a mess. Now, to some people that might seem like, man, you shouldn't ban anybody from running for president. But actually, the original idea would be that you just ban vice presidents from ever running for president altogether. And I would very much prefer that over what we have right now, because think about it, vice presidents, they can easily coast off of name recognition or the good feelings of the administration that they served to be able to kind of make up for any deficiencies that they have in terms of their charisma, their intelligence, and their ability to articulate their position on issues. Okay, that is a market failure, right? You want to produce the highest quality nominee, but they're kind of like coasting off of name recognition and the fact that people don't want to step on their toes. But, there are some circumstances where I can see that a vice president could still run to be their party's nominee. So the compromise solution would be to ban them for that one election when their name recognition and internal party politics are at their strongest. And that's the exact election following the term that they serve. I think that this is a solution that really needs to be considered. I think that this will produce, on average, stronger candidates for the Democratic Party. It is simple, it is effective, and it's a pretty clever way that we can make sure that no matter what, any nominee that represents the Democratic Party to try to become the most powerful person on earth is somebody that has passed the filtration process and has been battle tested in a way that people can feel confident that they can represent them sufficiently to become the most powerful person on earth. Thank you for watching. This is just a shot in the dark, but if by any chance any of you are in contact with Ezra Klein of the New York Times, please refer him to me. Please make sure that he contacts me, messages me on Instagram at Sessou Studios, SESSOU Studios. Please get him in contact with me. I need to talk to him. Thank you.